Authenticity isn't a nice to have in leadership. It's a non-negotiable. In a world full of facades, only your truth is the boldest move you can make. Welcome to the Danni Vee Show, the podcast for high-performing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs ready to lead with elegance, courage, and radical responsibility. I'm Danni Vee, and I'm here to help you strip away the fluff and step fully into your power at the boardroom and in business. In each episode, we'll share no-nonsense insights and real conversations on what it takes to show up authentically, make tough decisions with grace, and create impact at the highest levels. So if you're ready to own your voice and lead on your terms, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Danni Vee Show. Well, today is going to be a big one. Recently, something came to my awareness that I've gone back and forth about sharing publicly, but I've decided I'm going to do it. I'm sharing it today because there is a much bigger conversation here about leadership, reputation, visibility, and what happens when somebody else's version of you enters a room before you do. I found out that a woman had been speaking about me, and what she had been saying was influencing the way other people perceived me, and not in a good way. Some of those people never came to me. They've never asked a question. They've never taken the time to understand the full story. They simply accepted what they had heard and allowed it to shape their opinion of me. I've seen this too many times to too many women, and it needs to stop. This was a part that really got me. The realization that one person's story had entered rooms before I had. I'm going to share it today because there is a much bigger conversation here about leadership, reputation, visibility, and what happens when somebody else's version of you enters a room before you do. Apparently, communication is very lit up for me astrologically at the moment. Speaking up, being seen, and allowing myself to say the things that have previously stayed behind the scenes. So I'm going to step into it. I think there is something in that. The more visible my work becomes, the more committed I feel to having conversations that carry some depth. I want to talk about the parts of leadership that happen underneath the polished LinkedIn post, the speaking photograph, or even the business achievement. The parts that change your identity. These are the parts that make you question yourself and ask you to decide who you are going to be when you do not have control over what somebody else is saying. I'm in it now, so I'm going to share it. Now, I'm not going to share who she is. I have no interest in turning this episode into a public airing of somebody else's behavior. There are no names, no hints, and no dramatic reveal coming. So just so you know, this is about really making what can be a positive impact. What she had been saying has influenced so many other people and how they saw me. The thing is that some people actually accepted that, what they heard without speaking to me. And that is what really hurts. When I found out, of course it hurt. I wish I could tell you that I immediately moved into some highly evolved leadership mindset and carried on with my day, but I didn't. It really hit me in my body first. I felt the drop in my stomach. My mind began pulling together interactions that had felt slightly off, being ignored and just thinking they were having an off day. I found myself wondering who had heard what had been said, and how far the story had traveled. I started looking backwards at conversations and questioning whether people had met me with their own experience of me or with an opinion that had already been formed. It made me question everything. And it is such a horrible feeling. There is something deeply unsettling about realizing that a version of you has been circling in rooms you have never entered, especially when you care about your integrity, when that is one of your greatest and biggest values, which it is mine, especially when your work is built around relationships, trust, authenticity, and the way that people experience you. When you know the story being told is completely missing context. If you know me, you know I am somebody who will have a direct conversation. I will own my part. I will apologize when I have handled something poorly, and I will reflect on feedback even when it's uncomfortable. I also know that being willing to self-reflect does not mean accepting every version of yourself that another person creates, and I'm not going to do that this time. That distinction became very important for me just recently. When I heard this, when somebody speaks about us negatively, many high-performing women immediately begin searching for what they did wrong. And trust me, that's exactly what I did when I first found out. We replay the situation, look for the moment where we could have communicated better, look for how we could have been better. and consider how the other person may have felt. We start carrying both sides of the relationship while the other person continues telling their story of untruth. Now, self-awareness is powerful, but over-responsibility will drain you. I had to ask myself a very direct question to move through this and to come here today to make a positive impact for the other women that go through this. Is there something here that I need to own? I really sat with this. I looked at the circumstances. I considered my communication. I thought about whether I had acted in alignment with my values. I was prepared to see a blind spot if it was there. I wanted to know what I could do better. There are parts of the experience I would probably handle differently now because I'm always growing and my leadership continues to evolve. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I can hold the truth without making myself responsible for somebody else's choosing gossip over conversation. There is a point where reflection has done its job. After that reflection, though, after it's done the job, repeatedly examining yourself becomes a form of self-abandonment. The leadership shift for me happened when I stopped asking, how do I make everybody understand me? And when I started to ask myself, how do I want to lead now that I know that this has happened? And it's really hard. The question returned to me again and again. I cannot attend every conversation about me, and I cannot track down every person who has been given an incomplete version of me and my events. I also cannot build a business, lead clients, raise my family, care for my parents, create meaningful work, and simultaneously manage every opinion that exists about me. I also refuse to hand another woman that much influence over the way I walk into a room. This is where I am now. It doesn't mean the experience suddenly becomes painless. It's still there. It means I made a decision about what I do with this pain. There is a significant difference between feeling hurt and building your identity around the hurt. So let me explain that better. Leadership asks us to feel what is real, process it honestly, and remain responsible for what happens next. That's what I'm in control of. I could have allowed this to make me more guarded. And, I am still working through that, to be honest. And I could have walked into every room wondering who had already made up their mind, or call every person and have a discussion, which I didn't. And I could start editing myself and pulling back and becoming overly careful with everything I said. That's a temptation. But I'm actually deciding to do the opposite. When somebody misrepresents you, your nervous system wants protection. You become alert to risk. You read more deeply into facial expressions, delays in responses, and changes in tone. Your brain begins gathering evidence. This is a very human response. However, it is also an exhausting way to live and lead. So what I'm choosing to do, and what I want you to choose to do if this ever happens to you, is to become aware of the story you are at risk of creating from the story somebody else told. So this is where the deeper leadership really starts to dig in. An experience happens and it carries an emotional impact. You're human. Then we begin create meaning. So what's the meaning you're going to create through what you discover others are saying? So for me, I went straight back to people can't be trusted. Women are talking about me. No one's ever going to let me walk into a room. I should have kept my circle smaller. I shouldn't have trusted and been vulnerable. I need to prove who I am. I'm not enough. The stories keep continuing, right? Those beliefs, though, can begin directing your behavior long after the original conversation. So you need to stop that. And that's what I'm choosing to. My voice, my warmth, and my willingness to be seen have taken years to build, and it hasn't been an easy journey. There have been many seasons of my life where I found it easier to be useful than visible. I could coach, support, build, organize, lead, and create results for other people. Claiming my own authority publicly has required a different level of courage, and I'm feeling so brave to record this podcast today. I have worked for this voice. I have worked for the confidence to say what I believe. I have worked for the capacity to stand in front of a room and allow people to see me, and I'm not going to hide. One person's story does not get to take that away. There's another piece of this conversation that I believe you need to speak about more openly. All of us really need to speak about more openly. This impact does not end with the person being spoken about. Remember, gossip shapes culture. It changes relationships between people who may never have had a problem with each other. You have the power to stop that. Gossip can create distance before a genuine interaction has taken place, and it gives people a sense of certainty without even requiring them to be curious about who that person actually is. In workplaces, businesses, communities, this can be incredibly damaging. One person has an experience, they tell somebody else, their interpretation becomes a story. And then, ironically, the story becomes accepted knowledge. Soon people are responding to an individual through information they have never verified and don't even have any evidence to back it up. This completely erodes trust. It happens in leadership teams, in businesses, it happens between friends and in communities. It even happens inside rooms that describe themselves as supportive communities. Let's be the change. I don't want to see it happening among women who publicly say they are committed to lifting other women up, when really, in the background, they're pulling them right back down. I'm saying this with care because I believe we can be much more honest about how we contribute to the cultures of the way we want to create. Every time we accept a story without seeking context, we're making a choice. Remember that. Every time we speak about somebody rather than speaking with them or to them, we're making a choice. Every time we repeat something that is not ours to repeat, we influence the way other human being is being perceived, and that is not fair. Words have impact. Reputation is deeply personal for business owners and leaders, and it also carries commercial consequences. A comment can affect whether somebody refers you, collaborates with you, trusts you, or gives you an opportunity. This is why communication is a leadership responsibility. Now, I'm not saying that we need to like everybody. I'm not saying that. We do not need to agree with every decision. We are allowed to feel disappointed, frustrated, and hurt. Our feelings deserve somewhere honest to go, but they also deserve a conversation, a trusted, confidential space, maybe a coach, a therapist, somebody who can help us see the situation with greater clarity. It does not need an audience. I think many of us have experienced the seductive moment when somebody agrees with our version of events and we feel validated. It's great to have people agree with you, even when you know deep down you're making up a story. It feels good to hear, yeah, you're right. She should have done that to you. Validation can actually deepen our commitment to a story before we have considered the full picture. I want you to remember that. Strong leadership includes being very careful about who we invite into our frustration. When you're looking for the person who agrees with everything we say, this may make us feel better in the moment. The person who asks, have you spoken to her, may actually serve our growth far much more. Maybe you should seek out that person. I want people around me who care about my integrity more than my immediate comfort. I want people who will let me feel hurt and still ask me to lead myself well. I also want people who remind me of who I said I wanted to be. This is the standard I want to bring into other people's lives as well. When someone speaks negatively about another woman in front of me, I have a responsibility for what I do with that information. To ask myself, did I ask questions or add fuel? Do I carry it into another room and tell somebody else and continue the story when it's not even my story to tell? And do I allow the conversation to form my opinion of somebody I barely even know? These choices shape who you are. Remember that. This experience has also made me think about how much energy women spend trying to repair perceptions that were created without them. I'm sitting in this space now and I don't even have the words for it. You can actually become consumed with proving that you are good, kind, generous, ethical, and worthy of trust. I nearly went there. You can overgive to people who have already misunderstood you, and you can become overly accommodating in the hope that your behavior will eventually change their mind. Telling you, this is a very expensive response. At some point, you have to allow people to have the information that they have chosen. That took me a while to really accept, if I'm honest. People are allowed to believe a story that is incomplete, allowed to misunderstand you. And the worst is they are allowed to decide that another person's opinion is enough. Your own leadership, self-leadership, and leadership in business cannot depend on the unanimous approval. You still get to decide how you behave no matter what is being said about you, whether a direct conversation is appropriate, or you still get to decide the relationships who deserve repair and who you let go. One of the things that I have reflected on is that I'm still deciding to walk into the room as myself. For me, the greatest act of self-respect has been refusing to enter future relationships carrying the burden of somebody else's judgment. I want to meet people openly for who I am. And if they want to get to know me, I can't wait to get to know them too. I want my character to be seen through the way I show up consistently, including the days where I'm imperfect, tired, stretched, and still learning to be the person I am growing into. I believe that leadership credibility is built over time. It is built through hundreds of conversations, decisions, boundaries, mistakes, repairs, and moments where nobody is watching. It's not the highlight reel. I'm also making a commitment to myself to be more intentional about how I speak about other people. Pain can either deepen a pattern or it can actually sharpen our values. And I'm deciding today, as I speak to all of you, this experience has sharpened mine. I never want somebody to discover that I've been shaping the way others see them through a conversation they were never given the opportunity to join. I may need to process an experience or need support. I may need to say that somebody's behavior affected me, but I'm going to do that with care, context, and responsibility. I can remember that another person is still a whole human being while I am frustrated with one part of their behavior. It's not easy, but I can choose to see that. I can also refuse to turn a difficult interaction into a permanent identity. Again, it's not easy, but it really matters to me. And I want to build that for every single one of you as well. So there may be somebody listening who is dealing with something similar right now. Or perhaps you have found out that people have been talking to you. Perhaps you can feel a shift in a room when you walk into it. You don't fully understand what is going on. I've been there. I want you to know I've been there. Or maybe perhaps you're the one who's judged someone, who's built a story and continue to build that story that is not true. I want you to ask yourself a few questions. What is genuinely yours to own? Give yourself enough honesty to answer this without defending yourself. What belongs to the other person, and let them carry those choices? And does a direct conversation serve this situation, or is it time to let go and move on? The last question is, what are you allowing this experience to teach you about yourself? I know I've learned so much about myself in this experience. And how do you want to enter the next room? This is the most important question. You get to decide, nobody else, what you carry forward. You can choose to walk in scanning for judgment, or you can walk in connected to your own values and the person you know yourself to be. That's what I'm choosing. Some days that's going to require more intention than others. There's going to be rooms where you feel the old story rise again. Just take a breath, feel your feet on the floor, feel yourself connected to this beautiful earth, and let your body know that you are safe to be seen. Speak clearly, stay present, and always allow people to meet you. Your reputation matters, and your relationship with yourself matters even more deeply. I strongly believe protecting your reputation does not require chasing every rumor. Sometimes it requires continuing to live in a way that makes the truth visible over time. I am no longer available for carrying somebody else's version of me into rooms they are not standing in. I'm choosing to walk in as the woman I have become through every challenge, every mistake, every lesson, and every decision to keep growing. There's always going to be people who only know a part of your story. And there's always going to be people who make judgment through their own experiences, insecurities, loyalties, and beliefs. And it's your choice to know that that's okay. It is our work to become so anchored in our values that other people's perceptions can inform us without defining us. This is leadership. It's the capacity to remain open without becoming easily shaped, the courage to reflect without abandoning yourself. And it's allowing yourself to be seen even after being misunderstood. So I'm going to leave you with this. You cannot attend every conversation about you, but you can decide what your leadership looks like once you know those conversations exist. For me, it looks like speaking up, being seen, continuing to do the work I am deeply proud of. It also means surrounding myself with people who value honesty, courage, and direct communication. And most importantly, it looks like refusing to make somebody else the author of who I become. If you are struggling with this right now, or you know someone that's moving through this, I would love you to share it with a woman who may be carrying the weight of being misunderstood. Also, you can always complete my leadership identity survey through the link in the show notes. It will help you understand the way you are currently leading, where you may be holding yourself back, and what your next level is asking from you. It is such an honor to be here with you. And thank you for allowing me to share this deeply personal podcast with you. Remember, who you become determines what you build. I'll speak to you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me on the Danni Vee Show today. I hope you're leaving this episode feeling inspired and empowered. My goal is always to bring you elegant insights with a bold impact. If you enjoyed our conversation, I invite you to subscribe to the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback not only means the world to me, but it also helps other growth-minded leaders find this community. Remember, leadership is an inside-out journey. The poise, the passion, and the purpose we cultivate within ourselves are what transform the world around us. So until next time, stay true to your vision and keep leading with a unique mix of grace and strength. Stay radiant, stay resilient, and I'll be right here cheering you on. I can't wait to hang out with you again on the next episode of the Danni Vee Show.